afternoon and welcome to the Town of Riverhead Planning Board. Today is Thursday, August 18th, 2022. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we do not have any public hearings today, so we're going to move on to our discussion items. And the first item today is Long Island Cauliflower Association, and we have Greg Bergman for that.
Thank you. I did inform Mr. Israel of the meeting. I don't think he's able to attend. But this is a follow-up discussion from the last time we met on this application. The specific focus of this is the second building that they're proposing on site. It's the Jimmy John's Dunkin' Donuts. You Rick? Yes. All right, this is Rick Bartlett. He's one of the architects that's working on the project. So where we last left off was the Dunkin' Donuts Jimmy John's building on the site. Basically, I did give that, I provided copies in the packet. Okay. So that's fine. They basically have a single building which is going to house two uses, the Jimmy John's sandwich shop and the Dunkin' Donuts. Each of the uses has its own separate drive-through window. On the last versions of the plans, they didn't identify the locations of any menu boards, which is really where the backup on a drive-through line would start. They've submitted this sketch prepared by Rick Bartlett. It does identify the locations of the menu boards, and they do for the Jimmy John's sandwich shop. They did propose 4 like a drive-through waiting stalls, where if you order your sandwich, if it's not ready, you pull up and someone can come out and pick it up to you. Again, it's really to come to the board. Again, my opinion, I think the 2 drive-through windows on the one building does still create this circular, it's kind of just never-ending loop. The Dunkin' Donuts, from the location of the menu board, shows queuing capacity for 5 cars before it backs up into that drive aisle. And similarly, the Jimmy John's menu board shows queuing capacity for 6 cars before it would then, back up into the Dunkin' Donuts drive aisle. I really think it's just, 2 drive-through windows on one building. It would seem to lend itself more appropriately if they could combine the drive-through windows. That way you'd have queuing for the entire line around the building rather than 2 separate lines functioning out of one building.
Or 2 separate buildings.
Well, 2 separate buildings. They are proposing 4 buildings on site. You've got the Chick-fil-A, you've got this Dunkin' Donuts Jimmy John's. There is another drive-through restaurant with no tenant identified yet, and you do have a traditional sit-down restaurant at the north end. So it's just really a matter of the intensity of the use on that lot number 2 as it's assigned.
Are those buildings open through and through? Like, in other words, is there a separation between the 2 businesses, or are they open, like an open floor plan?
No, they share a back room.
Oh, they do?
Yeah,
So there's
they
no
share-
possibility of sharing a
They
driver?
will not share drive-through windows.
They won't?
It's just a corporate standard, they just won't do it.
So if you go into the building to order inside the building,
Right.
are there 2 separate places that you order from?
Yes. Yeah, there's a Jimmy John's side and a Dunkin' side.
And they'll share like a kitchen, or like the middle area would be the food prep area. So you're going into Jimmy John's or you're going into Dunkin' Donuts. It's not like I have seen other uses. Dunkin' Donuts used to have ones that they'd share with like Baskin Robbins and Pizza Hut. There would be these like combined uses, but this appears to be 2 separate uses. So here to get the board's pulse again. My opinion is that it's just the intensity and having 2 separate drive-in windows. I don't know of any buildings in town, any drive-through restaurants that have 2 separate windows on essentially one parcel.
So you say, no, go ahead, please.
I just had a question about one of the crosswalks on the left side there. That's a crosswalk, but where would you cross from or to? There's no parking there, it's just a road.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about in front of the, in front of the Jimmy John's
No, in front,
drive-through on the north side of the building?
no, where the dumpsters are. It's to this crosswalk.
Yeah, there was just a sidewalk that was provided toward the back,
Right.
I guess the back access aisle. And, that was something that's been there.
Yeah, where do you
Since
cross,
it was
where
laid-
would you
laid
cross
out.
from or to?
The bridge to nowhere.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's just another means to walk across the island from that back drive aisle.
Like for an employee to bring, for an employee to bring trash out to the dumpster, perhaps?
I think that might be the intent.
Because the crosswalk on the other side, which of course is on the main road, I could see people have people walk and then they.
Right, that's for pedestrian access. I
Right.
think the other side is more utilitarian.
I mean, I could see, if you were talking about that crosswalk, I could see adding, an additional sidewalk, just so that an employee could exit the building, go across that side, that crosswalk, and then go right to the dumpster rather than walking out into the drive aisle. That might be appropriate. Now, you wouldn't, like I said, you wouldn't necessarily need the drop curb and, an ADA accessible ramp, because nobody's gonna be walking out into the middle of the
No one's
drive
going
aisle.
to stop and allow that access anyway.
Yeah.
They'll be, that's, I think, Joe's point.
Yeah, but I think that might be appropriate to put a little crosswalk here, a little
Yeah.
sidewalk, just to allow an employee to access the dumpster without going into the drive aisle. But so how does the board feel about the two drive-throughs?
I'm personally torn about it because I like the drive-throughs for the handicap accessibility. People don't have to get out of a handicapped vehicle to go get something to eat. But I understand your position of, it's an awful busy circle around that building. I'm kind of torn.
If we take those 10 spots and if we have people, just take a look at the layout. If they go on the other side of the patio, you already see what can happen there. Now a person can't get out. And people have a way of doing that.
Well, I mean,
Now they're stuck there.
and-
They can't move. Now no one moves.
Well, and that's a valid point, because when you're, if you've got 5 cars that are, starting at the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through, backed out, now you get the 6th car that's backing out into the drive aisle. Now all of a sudden, the people that are exiting the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, they have to circle around the east side, they come around the north, boom, there's a car sitting in that drive aisle.
Exactly.
I mean, again, these uses don't exist, so I mean, the fact of, the 2 tenants refuse to share a location, I mean, that's not really the plan, the planning board's here to ensure that a site operates safely, and that there's no issues. It's not to ensure that,
It also appears to me that if you park your car and want to go into these places, you're going to have to cross the aisles where the cars are waiting. to get in.
that happens typically at, I mean, you
Any
go to
drive-through.
any restaurant, I mean, I just went to Burger King for lunch, I had to, parked on the west side of the parking lot, and I'm walking across the drive-through aisles. I mean, that I think is unavoidable. I think you find that at many of the fast food restaurants that have drive-throughs. It's really just,
I mean, to your point, it's on both sides of the building. It's not like you can park on one side and go in easier.
On both sides. Where is the walk-in entrance? Is that
On each end of the building,
on each end? One for Dunkin' and one for Jimmy John?
correct, facing the patios, the respective
So you
patios.
walk over the patio in order to get,
Right.
and what is the approximate size of those patios? Tell you the one on the left for Jimmy John's.
maybe 45 by 45, roughly.
And what is the distance between that patio? See where the car is exiting now? Okay, on the other side of that patio, near where the drive-through waiting area is?
The
What-
north side of the building or the south side?
North side of the building, I guess that would be. Where am I at
So-
here?
so-
Jimmy John's patio is on the left.
Mhm.
So the drive-through waiting area is to the north of that?
Yes.
Okay. What is the distance between that patio and that drive-through waiting area? You have that. Because I'm sure none of this is drawn to scale, it never is.
No, I mean, this was just
about-
an inset for just the,
20-some odd feet, 20 to 22 feet.
Car is 20 some odd feet. So
Wide?
there's- No, long. So you know what I'm getting at already. You know, the back out of there, you put a truck in there and,
so the drive-through aisle on the previous versions of the plans was about 12 feet wide. They showed a 12-foot landscaped island and then a 12-foot backup aisle, which with the angled parking
Okay.
does meet the code. I think they've widened that a little bit, so I mean, even if you split the distance, there might be maybe 18 feet behind those stalls.
it's not a lot.
Well, I mean, when you have angled parking, you don't need the
Well, yeah, I
24-foot
mean-
wide drive aisle to back out. When you do have, I think these are, what, 60-degree stalls?
I think so.
I think when I looked it up at the code, it did have the required drive aisle distance when it was 12 feet. If anything, I think they've widened it.
When they want to get deliveries, where do the delivery trucks go? For either or both?
Our deliveries come at
Excuse
night.
me, can you just
Sorry.
state your name, please?
My name is Neerja Jain, and I'm the owner of the Dunkin' Donuts Jimmy John, proposed Dunkin' Donuts Jimmy John.
Just spell your last name, please.
Jain, Jain.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And you say deliveries come at night.
Yes, they do.
Where do they park to deliver?
They would technically come in and park on the, because we don't work overnight, so they can come in and park where it says car park 18. What would be this
In
called?
the
The
drive
south
aisle.
side? Drive aisle.
So basically, you get the deliveries when you're closed.
Yes, we do.
Originally, was this supposed to only be, did you ask for just one drive-through? Is that,
I believe when the plans first, when they changed the plans to a fast food type use, I believe it was only one tenant. I don't think they had multiple tenants.
That I don't remember. I don't know if Duncan was even involved.
We've always done it for the two.
I'm sorry?
We've applied for the two since we've gotten.
I think it might have just been a generic layout previously with, a single drive-through lane.
I'd have to go back and look to see what it was initially proposed. So, I mean, I think the board's torn, and I think it really needs some direction from the applicant. I mean, in my opinion, the two tenants with the two drive-throughs in one building just has too many concerns and presents too many logistical issues.
I agree. It's
I mean,
congested.
putting a couple of drive-through waiting stalls doesn't do anything to, mitigate the fact that you've got menu boards that have minimal queuing space.
I agree.
I mean, the Dunkin' Donuts that I go to by my house, when you're there in the morning, I understand there may be some difference between peak hours for Dunkin' Donuts, peak hours for Jimmy John's, but I mean, even if I go to Dunkin' Donuts at 12 o'clock on a Sunday, there could be 7 or 8 or 9 cars in there. You get 7 or 8 or 9 cars at the Dunkin' Donuts, like I said, you're now backed up into that drive aisle and
Right,
nobody's getting out.
and this is smack dab in the middle of.
I don't know how it can be improved, but I don't like it.
One of the main reasons why we had picked these, because the businesses for both of them are totally different hours. Dunkin' Donut in here will be totally morning. Jimmy John doesn't open up till 11 o'clock and then they function. The ones that we have visited in Atlanta that have Dunkin' Donut and Jimmy John together, Jimmy John basically has a lot of takeouts, so they pre-order. 60% of the business is done via internet and phone Grubhub, so they just come in, pick up the order, and they're gone. So these sandwiches are pretty much ready, so the wait time is very minimal for these.
I disagree with you that Dunkin' Donuts is primarily in the morning. They go throughout the entire day.
Peak hours, our peak hours of business is basically morning.
And those peak hours are peak hours for other businesses also right there. There's too much going on right here, and something has to give.
Well, and the planning board, we're we're reviewing a site plan, we have these potential tenants in mind, but the board's also gotta bear in mind that the board does not issue building permits, a use permit, so we're reviewing this with the presumption that it's a Dunkin' Donuts, Jimmy John's. If the Jimmy John's business doesn't work, there could be another tenant that could easily occupy a space with a building permit or a use permit, so the board's gotta look at this at more of a broader scale, as you're designing the site, you're not approving a Dunkin' Donuts or a Jimmy John's, that just happens to be the tenants that the applicant is proposing, but that could very easily change and change the dynamic of the site to then become, now you may have two conflicting uses, so
Okay.
you have to keep that in mind when you're,
Greg, I agree, and that's how I'm looking at it, because the tenants have a way of changing. I get it. You know, I'm just using it when I refer
Yeah,
to it. I'm just using it because that's what's written.
no, I
That could say
I
Burger
I
King.
just don't want that fact to be
Yeah,
lost,
yeah.
that, you know, while we're considering it, they could change and the board would not necessarily, you know, create an issue
It's
down.
too late.
Yeah. You know, you're approving the site plan, you're approving the way the site functions. You're not necessarily approving tenants or hours of operation.
And the possibility exists too that it could be one user in that building at someday, and then what would you need for two, two?
Yeah. I mean, one user in the building, you know, if you had one drive-through lane
Right.
to go through around that building, that would be more similar with most of the restaurants that you see, where you have one user, one drive-through lane, where if there are, you know, if you had the drive-through with one lane, now you've got 12 to 14 cars worth of queuing capacity, as opposed to two
Yeah,
conflicting.
I'd like to ask a question, because I've noticed this as of late. You can answer this question. I noticed as of late, there are two windows. You've ordered, you pay, and you go and pick it up.
Right.
So nothing, in other words, you're not waiting. If your order is not ready when you get to the second window, is when you go into that waiting area.
Only for Jimmy John. Usually Dunkin' Donuts, there's really very little wait area. By the
Okay.
time you place an order and you come, pretty much it's ready. If it's not, then you wait a few seconds. Our wait times are not really as much for Dunkin' Donuts. And then if, in case it's not ready, then you go to the wait area and they drop it off to you.
The Dunkin' side has two windows, Jimmy John's only has one.
So Dunkin' has two, but Jimmy John has one?
Correct.
Well, I mean, the two windows where you pay and,
Pick it-
Um,
Yes. And
Oh,
with
I
our
get it. Yeah,
changing
yeah, yeah, yeah.
business
I
that's
see.
happening
Okay,
these
I
days,
see.
it's almost, it's been a shift since COVID.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of our orders are even in our inline stores, they're basically on the telephone, on the internet, on-the-go orders. Our 60% of business has changed to on-the-go. So basically, our team, we hire our team to function for the on-the-go orders. It's become really, it's a changing trend. That's the reason why we've done two concepts, and it's drive-through. Basically, they come in, they place an order. Our orders are pretty much ready. They come in, pick it up, and they're gone. So wait, it's really very little, minimal wait if they have done that.
well, again, to reiterate what Greg said, in case you're no longer the tenant at some point and something else comes in, we have to plan for the
Well,
future.
Jimmy John and Dunkin', because it got bought over by another company, Inspire Brands, they're all the same brand. And in case if it doesn't work out, which I think it will, because we are franchisees for both of them, so it is our building. We wouldn't have a third party come in, because it's going to be just our building.
Hey, Rick, can you take this back to the drawing board and maybe come up with some other ideas?
We could take a look at it, I don't know what other options are available. You know, we could possibly move the menu board up in the line for the Dunkin' side and increase that stacking by at least one car. Possible maybe to shift the building.
Just too many activities
Yeah,
in one
it's just a
spot.
lot going on there, and if that stacking gets tied up, and it happens quick, then it's a mess.
I mean,
I'm sorry, I don't
there may be
frequent
options.
either one of those places, I'm not a fast food person, but let me
You
ask this
should
question.
come in and see the service we
does-
provide, it's pretty fast.
Does
You
Dunkin'
won't be
Donuts,
waiting.
does Dunkin' Donuts serve sandwiches and the
Breakfast
light?
sandwiches, yes, breakfast sandwiches only.
Okay, all right.
And you have a grilled cheese, I think.
Yes, we do. I mean, very limited lunch and dinner menus.
Just have a tuna.
So the kitchen is shared, you said?
Yeah,
Just the back where
The back of house is shared.
Can I follow how the traffic comes in off the main road for a second? He comes in and you want to go up to Jimmy John or Dunkin'. You come down, you got to make this sweeping turn, and you're going to go past if you want to go to Jimmy John, and then you have to go all the way around the other side to get to Dunkin'. But
Yeah.
when they've done it with Dunkin', they also have to go around the same way. And it seems to me that that corner there is going to be possibly a traffic jam, especially if it's built up at Jimmy John's.
Right, I mean, the only thing I could
Big
see that
space.
might alleviate the problem is if we decrease the amount of parking that's on the site. Because quite frankly, to have 36 parking spaces for this building, they're never gonna occupy
Is
that
that
many
required?
spaces.
Is that what the requirement is?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't know what
Technically, I mean, Dunkin' Donuts, we have a restaurant seating provision in our parking code, which is one parking stall for 3 seats, which is how we've always traditionally kind of looked at restaurants, be it Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
I mean, I will definitely agree that you go into a Dunkin' Donuts, there's maybe a couple of chairs, it's not really an eat-in restaurant.
You'd probably have a total of maybe 30, 35 seats between the two of them. So you'd probably only need, per the code, anywhere between 10 and even overestimating 15 parking spaces to allow for some employees. You know, we show 36, so there's a possibility that by, you know, decreasing the amount of parking that we're showing, that we might be able to facilitate the drive-through lanes in a better fashion. It would have to be looked at.
I don't see how taking away parking lanes is
Yeah,
going to help with the congestion of,
Unless the
The
building,
vehicles.
unless
Yeah, I
the
mean,
building
that-
were to be
That would just prevent you
reconfigured
from
somehow.
doing a change of tenancy in the future. If you reduce your parking, now
Right.
it's like, now we're short.
Yeah, that's
Again,
true.
Looking at this thing big term, I'm not trying to just squash something just to squash something, but I don't see how you mitigate it without reducing it down to one window. You know, I mean, for example,
I don't see why we would have to provide parking based on what could potentially come down the road. We need to provide parking based on what we're proposing, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's no, it's an interesting question, because again, Dunkin' Donuts is not a traditional sit-down restaurant. I'm not that familiar with Jimmy John's. I don't know if it is more of a sit-down
No,
component.
it's not. It's a takeout.
It's mostly to go,
Takeout.
it's sandwiches.
I think we're going to have to come up with something a little bit better than this.
You know, I mean, again, even if you eliminated some of the stalls on either the north or the south side, I don't see how that addresses
It doesn't.
this, like, traffic, you know, flow around the building, going around both the east and west side. I don't see how eliminating parking would really fix that problem.
I was just, you know, in terms of options to even explore, that was just one of the options that I thought of, because I know that it's overparked right now. And I don't know if maybe by doing that, the two sides could somehow be isolated, one from the other. I don't know. You know, whereby maybe there's an in curb cut at a different location instead of coming in and around. Maybe it comes in, goes to one side, and goes to the other. I don't know, without throwing some lines down, I don't know exactly how it could be reconfigured, but that was just something that I thought might be an option.
It looks like you're trying to do too much here in a small space. And I think that I can speak on behalf of all of us that we're not going to go any further with what we have in front of us now. So something has to give.
Maybe if we come up with a double lane, when this
there's
Dunkin'
another- there's
order
another
is taken,
empty
they come
restaurant
out of
right
here
there,
and
just
take
to
away
the
these
north.
parking spots.
What's that?
There's another empty restaurant just to
Come
the
in
north.
and you go
Yeah.
out.
Put one in one in
That's what
the
you
other
do
one.
now. You come in and then you go out.
We'll make it a fixed, so there's no.
No, that doesn't.
You know, I mean, I understand it from a business proprietor standpoint, but I also understand it just identify the potential impacts and the issue that could be created by two drive-in windows on the
Right.
on each side of the building.
I mean, we're not anti-business here, it's like we want to help you, but
Why don't
We
we
have
take
to
a
look
look at
into
it
the
again
future.
and see if we can come up with a little bit
okay.
better plan and maybe present it back out to you guys again?
Yeah, maybe come up with a couple options.
Sure, we can do that.
Could you answer a question here, because this was something else I had looked at earlier. It says 36 parking spaces, we see 18 on each side of the building. Where are the 16 queue spaces? I see a total of 8.
Well, so I mean, I think the queue spaces, I think they just counted the number of cars that are shown there, but that's not really an accurate assessment.
right.
Because your menu board where you go to place your order, that's, that's how, I don't know if the board feels the same way, but that would be, in my opinion, where your queuing starts.
Right, yeah, I mean, I
And
know,
most
I
people
counted the
don't
cars,
park
I got
6
that, but...
inches, from the next car, usually a couple of feet.
And these are kind of really jammed
Yeah.
together.
All right, so we gotta come up with a couple more ideas.
We have a couple of Jimmy John's, Dunkin' Donut that they've done in Atlanta. Maybe we can put something together,
Yeah.
make a prototype.
Some
That would-
In other words, you've got an example of places where the two are
Yes.
together,
Yep, that's how it
with
is.
drive-in windows.
Yep, two different avenues.
Be nice to see, some, either
Absolutely.
site plans or pictures or something.
Are they local?
Oh, yes, they're functioning.
Where?
Atlanta.
No, it's not local.
Oh,
No, it's not local,
Oh,
Atlanta,
no, it's
Georgia.
Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to see, just like you said, how the site's laid out,
Right.
it's like, are they dealing with the same, dimensions
Sure.
we're dealing with, or do they have, is it somewhere it's on
Right,
2
property
acres and they've got plenty
size,
of
is
room?
that the same?
Yeah.
We need to see something, okay? I think everybody's good? Good?
I'm good.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
You?
Bart, B-A-R-T.
Bartlett. Yeah.
I know I recognize that name.
Yeah, now it's gone. All right, thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Riverhead Energy LLC.
Actually, there was one, we amended the agenda to the printed places.
You?
This will just be a quick one. This was a previous subdivision. It's previously been known as Old Orchard at Riverhead, and most recently known as Farmview Estates. It's roughly a 26-acre parcel located on Middle Road. The board last year had approved a 25-lot sketch plan. We had gone through a yield map. They presented a sketch plan which was compliant with the Long Island Workforce Housing Act. So the board approved a 25-lot sketch plan for a residential subdivision. Since the adoption of that sketch plan, the project sponsor has changed, and they've submitted an amended sketch plan. Still shows 25 lots, still more or less generally the same layout. They did do some minor modifications. We did send the sketch plan to Vinnie Gaudiello. He did have some comments relating to the grading and drainage plan, but he did say that sketch plan approval may be considered with the understanding that roadway drainage design and grading improvements would need to be further evaluated. So I do have a resolution on to just approve the amended sketch plan. That would allow the new applicant to submit a preliminary plat based on that sketch plan. Again, not increasing the number of lots, was not significantly changing. It still had open space up towards the front on Middle Road. It's just slightly reconfiguring the layout. So I have a
You're
resolution.
still gonna have affordable housing.
Yeah, there were 22 market rate units, and based on the Long Island Workforce Housing Act, they got a 10% density bonus, so they got 3 additional lots. So 3 of those will be reserved as affordable housing, and that'll be handled through the Community Development Agency.
Okay,
That was it.
anybody else? Okay, very good. Now we will move on to Riverhead Energy LLC, and I just want to be clear that this is something, a topic that was initiated by the planning department. There is nothing being voted on today. We're just here to listen to what Riverhead Energy LLC is all about. So with that, Charters, take it away.
Yes. All right, just so, Madam Chair, to what you said, you guys can sit wherever you can fit. This is for informational purposes. We did receive a site plan for Riverhead Energy LLC. They're seeking to do a 100-megawatt battery energy storage system at 87 Mill Road in Riverhead. As you may or may not be aware, battery energy storage systems are not permitted in the town code at this time. There's currently legislation before the town board to consider these uses. However, no law has been adopted. There was a public hearing on Tuesday, the 16th, to take public comments on the law. Looking at this site, as the law is currently drafted, I did share it with the board via email. This site would not conform as the law is currently written. It's not permitted in that zone. So as a whole, the law looks to, primarily it's a safety law. It looks to make sure these things comply with New York State Fire Code, they're cited properly, and there's minimal environmental impacts as a result of these installations. In a nutshell, the way battery energy storage systems work on a large scale, this is lithium. These are lithium-ion batteries, so essentially they're purchasing power from the grid and then putting power back into the grid. It's a new green energy technology. For this site, it's a 3-acre site on Mill Road. If you're familiar with the area, it's just south of the self-storage facility, just north of the Long Island Railroad. There is the mobile home park that's behind it. It's currently got storage buildings on site, which is pre-existing non-conforming use. It's the applicant's intent to go from that non-conforming use to another non-conforming use, so they are seeking relief from the zoning board. I thought it would be beneficial for both the board and the public to know what's sort of coming through, provided they are successful with their zoning board application. SEQR will have to be done, and traditionally it is this board that undertakes SEQR review on site plan. So, application, so this, you have a report that I shared with the board last week that the applicant has also seen that identifies a number of issues with the application that remain outstanding. We have received some additional information, but they have not been analyzed. With that being said, I could really turn it over to the applicant to kind of give you a summation of what they want to do. And then if the board has questions on either my report or for the applicant, we can come back to that when they're done.
Good afternoon. Chris Kent from Farrell Fritz here on behalf of the applicant. Here with me today is Adam Stanek, who is representing the applicant, Andrew Kelly from VHB, who's engineering for the site, and Paul Rogers, who's prepared the code compliance report, the fire safety report, the emergency response report. Is there one I'm missing?
That's it.
So you've been
Okay.
busy.
Yeah, so-
Our expert with 30 years at the New York City Fire Department.
Yes, he's the one who's analyzed the fire code and the fact that this complies. But let me take you back to a little introduction about what battery energy storage is about. There has been a statewide objective to increase the use of battery energy storage systems, referred to as BESS, B-E-S-S, to store power during off-peak hours, off-peak electrical use hours, to have power available during peak hours. The current electrical grid utilizes peaker plants. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with those. They have a quick startup. They create a tremendous amount, a sudden burst of greenhouse gases for the fast startup of peaker plants. The state has looked at this, had NYSERDA, was tasked with, NYSERDA is New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. They've been tasked with to analyze the impacts of developing a statewide policy for the use of BESS systems in place of peaker plants to meet peak energy demands. So the concept is for the power to be stored in battery storage during off-peak hours so that it's available during peak hours of demand. And that way you can avoid the use of peaker plants, which have very quick startup, again, a sudden burst of greenhouse gases based on the quick time that they have to start up to meet demand. We had an issue, I don't know if you had it out here, but I was in Hot Bog. That day it was very hot, probably about 98 degrees. Our building shut down because the power went out. This was 100 Motor Parkway, 100 and 102 both went out, the whole complex went out, because the overload demand of power, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, on that day when it was, 98 degrees, and felt like 110, I think is what they said on News Channel 12.
Was
So,
the term more like brownouts rather than shutdowns, something like that?
yeah, it was kind of a brownout. It was out, power was out for about 3 hours. Came back up later when it cooled down, power came back. So I don't know if that was I'm not sure why that occurred, but I was told later on that it was too much demand. The substation in the Hopog Industrial Park got overloaded, and, there was not enough power available at the moment. So the idea is to create more storage, battery storage, where you can store power and have it available until in peak demand time. And Adam can speak more to that. Adam has a whole presentation about it. But just to go a little further about what NYSERDA, they researched and studied the proposed use, and they prepared a GEIS and a model code for municipalities to consider for encouraging the development or allowing the development of battery storage systems in municipalities throughout the state. And I believe Matt Charters, who prepared the code for town board consideration, that's not really a planning board issue, but I think this discussion is more about what battery storage is and why it's being encouraged and why there are going to be developers interested in coming into town and building battery energy storage systems and make applications to the planning board for site plans for battery energy storage systems. So we have Adam Stanek from Hexagon, who is, I think, the first battery energy storage system application in the town of Riverhead.
That's correct.
There are battery energy storage system applications currently being made in other towns. And so everybody's looking at this now because there is a statewide effort to increase battery energy storage
Have there any
systems.
been constructed here on Long Island? Have any been constructed on Long Island?
Yes, there is battery energy storage on Long Island. There is a small battery energy storage unit out, I believe it's in Montauk, out further out the South Fork there. And there's also battery energy storage closer to New York City. They're actively using battery energy storage as the plan to replace the big Ravenswood peaker plant in New York City as a health benefit to the residential residents that live adjacent to that, since the peaker plant has been harming their health for the last handful of decades. They're replacing that with battery energy storage. So this is something that is being done across New York State as well as in Long Island for the benefit of residents.
Because I know they have peaking plants for generation of electricity, but they're fuel power, and they only come on when they need demand. So this is very similar, only using electricity.
Yes,
far as
it is a similar use that can replace the peaker plants with cleaner, safer energy.
The one that the unit that you're talking about in the city, is that the one in Astoria?
I believe that one is
Con Ed?
actually King County.
Wh-
I believe that's actually King County in New York City.
Because Astoria, I believe there's one in Astoria.
Yes, sir.
In the limited amount of education that I have on it, I get differing values on 100 megawatt. I hear that it will power 16,000 homes for 4 hours. Then I hear that it will power 60,000 homes or 59,000 homes for the day, which doesn't make quite any sense to me. And the other thing that I read is that these are best suited in a solar farm or solar area, where they can then utilize the power for storage in the solar and then dispense it out. Again, limited, what I read.
George, Adam has a presentation. I believe he's handed up a
If it's a-
PowerPoint presentation.
If
Let
it's o-
Adam walk it through.
If it's okay, I'll quickly go through it, and I can
Sure.
address that question. I do have actually calculations I've done with the help of Ivan Reguera. Some I've got online, our technical expert from Powell, and I have done some calculations on the number of households this supports, and I can get into that as well. And I made a note of that. I may address some of your questions just flying through this presentation. I won't go through all of it today. I did prepare this presentation for you to take home and have as a reference going forward, but I'll highlight some things in here. I just want to start by saying thank you for your time to the board. Again, my name is Adam Stanek. I'm with Hexagon Energy. We're a small business in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we work to develop clean, safe power that produces affordable energy for residents and communities across the United States. So thanks for having us here today. So this presentation, kind of the bottom line here you see on the front page, this is battery energy storage is meant to provide more reliable and more stable power for residents right here in Riverhead that would be lower cost. That's what we're trying to do here. Flip into the table of contents. All I want to say here is today I'll just cover why energy storage, why Riverhead, and then why specifically this site. And then quickly get into the site plan. We've got some visual renderings of what that'll look like, both from a bird's eye view and from the ground level, and then I'll take your questions. So just really quickly, building on what Chris Kent was saying, I'm flipping to the page after that. It says energy storage can relieve electrical congestion and improve grid stability. So I know I don't need to tell you, you're well aware that Long Island has some of the highest electricity prices in the whole country at $25 a megawatt hour on average. Riverhead is nearly double that at $45 a megawatt hour on average. That's largely due to electrical congestion. You see the red here in this picture shows lines that are near zero capacity for additional electrical generation. That congestion reduces reliability, increasing risk for brownouts or blackouts. And it also increases prices for residents that residents have to pay. Demand is high, supply is low. Supply has a hard time getting through like jammed pipes. It's just too full. And so the solution is either to build more transmission that'll reduce congestion and allow for bigger and more pipes to transmit electricity to meet demand. And another solution is what we call non-wires solution, or instead of transmission wires, we would use batteries. And batteries can pull congestion off the lines, charge up, and be a local source of immediately dispatchable energy when residents need it. And that's what we're trying to do here, is reduce congestion with this battery, grab cheaper energy when people are not demanding it in the middle of the night, and have it available to increase supply immediately locally when people need it, rather than having to pull it up transmission lines from further west on the island. So again, batteries relieve electrical congestion, meet peak demand, and lower prices for residents. Now I just want to talk specifically about Riverhead on the next page. Energy storage benefits the town of Riverhead directly in 5 ways. And this is really the crux of why we're here, to help support the Riverhead community and improve energy prices and energy reliability for Riverhead. So 1, it reduces pollution. As Chris was saying, rather than dirty peaker plants in Suffolk County having to fire up in the evening during peak times to provide energy, a battery provides clean energy because it can charge up from, for example, the Riverhead solar farms in Calverton. I'll get to more of that in a minute. Provides lower cost energy by taking cheaper energy earlier in the day and shifting it to peak demand times, say when people come home from work from 5 to 7 p.m. It also provides better quality and more stable energy. The way it does that is it regulates frequency and voltage. So just, obviously the grid has to provide energy at the correct voltage and frequency so equipment does not get damaged that's using that energy. Batteries help provide that stable energy and prevent brownouts and blackouts. Number 4, this one's really important. I want to take a second to explain this. This specific battery actually helps maximize the benefit of existing solar in the town of Riverhead. And the way that does this is currently, the solar farms over in Calverton, they're pumping out solar energy during peak solar times from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That is not peak electrical demand for the residents in Riverhead. So that energy, instead of staying locally, needs to get shipped out toward demand in New York City. So instead of the Riverhead solar farms solely generating energy to benefit residents here, that energy is shipped away. Now the battery, once put here on the site we're proposing, has the ability to grab those electrons that are pushed onto the grid at 1 in the afternoon, save those electrons for when people come home from work at 6 p.m., and provide that energy immediately dispatchable to the residents that are closest to that facility that call upon that energy. Therefore, the solar energy created, not only do you capture more of that because you don't lose the energy as it's shipped down lines to New York City, but it benefits residents here with lower prices. And lastly, this project will create new long-term revenue for the town that is going to benefit residents in additional tax revenue. Specifically, this will be a 10 times increase in revenue from the current use of the property and the taxes currently being paid on this property. I'll move a little bit quicker now. I'm just going to flip over to the map that's in the presentation showing this site. I want to talk specifically about this site. So we talk about why battery energy storage in Riverhead, but why this site? So there's a couple reasons. It fits the local aesthetic in that the land is currently being used for industrial use. The site has always been used for industrial use, even though it was rezoned to RB40 residential zoning. It's always been industrial use. The neighbors around there, the property are industrial use. To the north, you have the Cube Smart storage units. To the east, you have industrial building and paving and material suppliers. You have the railroad to the south and then the post office. And then you have a storage yard for the Glenwood facility immediately to the west. And then, of course, on that very northwest corner, you do have the Glenwood manufactured home neighborhood. And I can talk more about that in a minute, but I have met with Mr. Stark and each one of those residents personally and spoke with them about this project. And also, you see this site is very close to the substation, the high voltage substation just south of the river, and is an optimal place to tie into that substation to provide energy that works well for the electrical flow. For
Sorry,
the
where is the substation?
So on the map, just south of the river, it's called the Middle Country Road Substation.
Oh, okay, I see.
It's at the bottom of the map.
It's across from Snowflake.
I see.
So
Local knowledge.
So flipping to the next page, just want to talk quickly about a little bit more about this site and then move into the site plan. So it fits local land use. Current land use is industrial storage. There's industrial storage and auto service on the property. You can see some pictures here and on the next page of the current use of the property. This would be a big visual upgrade to the property, and I'll show more of that in the visual renderings in a moment of the new site plan. And of course, as I was saying, close to the sub and providing an annual pilot payment that would increase tax revenue 10 times. But the big thing is here, not only is it a visual upgrade, this is a higher and better use of the property for the benefit of the residents, the reason we're talking about, for better health and lower electrical prices. I'll quickly just jump to the site plan. So again, we've got Andrew here from VHB to answer site plan specific questions. His firm has engineered this for us. I'll just give a quick overview, but he can answer any more specific questions as well. You can see we've got 50-foot setbacks from Mill Road, 25 to 30-foot setbacks on the north side. We are about 60 feet from the west setback and about 25 feet on the south. I'll just flip to the landscaping plan. Happy to come back to the site plan.
Can we just take one thing here? The south boundary is the Long Island Railroad.
The railroad, yes.
That's the railroad tracks. The northern boundary is the Cube Smart, which is the mini storage, the self-storage. So just to give you an idea, actually the mini storage wraps around.
That's correct, yep. And then obviously to the east across Mill Road is the industrial properties, the
How deep,
paving and buildings.
how deep is that property? In other words, on the railroad track, how deep does it, how many feet does it run on the tracks?
690 feet. It's on the bottom of the plan.
690?
Yep, 690.7.
So how close does that put that to those two propane operations that are behind it?
I'm not sure. I'd have to measure that.
Where's the propane?
They're down.
There's two places right behind it.
Talking about fishing and
I could potentially measure that on my GIS really quick, but I'm not exactly sure.
That's not a mile. No.
The propane is on the other side of the tracks, south side of the,
It's on well, they're on both.
they're on Cromer.
oh,
They're on
that's,
Cromer.
yeah, Cromer's pretty far down.
Where is that?
My question is because of fire.
Cromer Avenue is way, I'll show you.
We got a lot of
How far
propane
away?
down in that
It's west,
neck of the
head
woods.
west, all the way to the next traffic light. I'll show you when you get to it. if you can bring it
What
up.
you can't see is
Across
one that
the
has
lake.
not been built as of yet.
Even.
You can't see
It's,
that one because
this
it's
is
just being
Cromer.
built.
Okay. Cromer.
That's Cromer Avenue.
It looks
right
pretty
there.
far away. So is it one of these on Cromer?
No, it's on this side. It's on the east side of Cromer Avenue, over the railroad tracks. So here's the railroad tracks.
Yeah. And so is it up here by this?
Yes.
What's
yeah,
in
it'll be
between
that
it?
area.
That water farm?
So I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah. I see.
measuring this really quickly on my GIS, but to give a real quick estimate, like here, Chris?
Yeah, it would be on this land right here. This is
Okay.
Paraco, I think is
So-
over there. right?
The nearest property line is about 0.7 miles away. It's pretty far away. And 0.7 miles is pretty far as from
Yeah,
risk
yeah,
for
okay.
battery energy storage. Okay, so, but great question. Just flipping to from the site plan to the next page, landscaping. I won't say a lot about landscaping because the visual rendering probably is more helpful, but just to say, we're going to include as much of the existing buffer as possible, especially on the northwest side where the corner touches the Glenwood development. And then we also are going to include what VHB is designated solar farm type mix, evergreen trees that they start out when they're sapling 8 feet high.
Yeah, they're expected to be installed at 8 to 10,
8 to 10.
maximum height of anywhere from 20 to 30 plus.
Obviously going
And
from-
then the landscape areas within the site that are not gravel will be native and adaptive solar seed mix that we've used in the town of Riverhead in the past.
And the height of the units is about 10 and a half feet.
Correct.
So these trees are going to be almost, at the time they're planted, they'll almost be as high as the top of the units.
Yes.
We'll also have a fence enclosure too around the perimeter of the site as well.
Right. Currently spec'd at an 8-foot fence, but happy to take the planning board's feedback, which suggests we reduce it to 6 feet.
6 feet.
So, excuse me, planning staff's feedback. So just flip into the visual renderings, and then I'll take questions. So we don't have to go through all of these. I've got a series of visual renderings of the site plan for what it could look like based on VHB's engineering. This is a artistic rendering, not the final photorealistic rendering. But this goes clockwise around the site. So starting bird's eye view, you see rotating around the train tracks headed toward the west. You flip through here, you can see the storage yard on the west. You can see as you flip around the CubeSmart storage units looking from the north. I'm flipping through pretty quickly, I apologize for that, just for the sake of time. You flip around and you can see from Mill Road how it looks, and then it starts to drop down into Mill Road. And then I'm all the way down to the ground level now, probably like 10 pages into the visual renderings. But kind of ends here on the ground level, looking in from Mill Road at the switch yard. You can see how the battery storage units are actually lower than the CubeSmart storage units. Battery storage units being around 10.5 feet tall, CubeSmart approximately 12 or higher. You see the switch yard there as you zoom in a little closer. And you can also see what it looks like from the Glenwood development. This is not including all the current screening in place from Glenwood, but you can see with the plantings on the landscaping plan from VHB that you would barely be able to see the battery storage units themselves. And then you can see on the last rendering there is from the train tracks, from the post office side of the train tracks on the southeast corner. I'm kind of ending with another bird's eye view. So I think I'll pause there. I'm happy to talk more about who Hexagon Energy is, more about timeline and next steps, or dive into anything deeper, but I want to make time for questions.
I'm looking at the entrance off Mill Road.
Great.
What is that beginning area, and what goes on there?
I'm sorry, sir, what is the
Switch yard,
beginning?
he's asking
As you
about
go
the
in.
As you go in, that's the
before you
switch
get-
yard, the
before you
subs.
get to all- yeah.
Yeah, so that as you walk in on your left side, that's the switch yard or the substation where the power coming from the batteries will be connected into the power lines on Mill Road. So it kind of goes in there and is transformed into the correct voltage to connect to the 69 kV power lines that run down Mill Road. So that's the substation.
You make it, that's where you make the connection, that's where you draw from, and
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
on Mill Road.
Yes, sir.
I know it's kind of relatively new, but what is the history of the safety record, fires, leaks, et cetera? Is there any history of other plants?
Yes, that's awesome. I've got two experts here with me. I'd love to give the opportunity to speak to that. One is Paul Rogers with ESRG, our fire safety expert. I've also got Ivan Reguera, who works with, he's our technical expert at Powen. Powen's the battery technology company that we have spec'd this site to use their technology. So Ivan's on the phone on my computer live on a phone call, and I'll turn over first to Paul just to give him an opportunity to speak to safety.
Yeah, that's a great question. How many have failed? Yeah, and you're talking about around the nation, right? The ones that I'm familiar with are a couple that took place in Arizona. And just to be very clear, they were built before the codes were actually established of what we have today. So a lot have been done with the codes in order to try to keep these things safe. But there's been a couple of others. There's been one in California that also took place. There's been one in Texas. But again, law of averages, the more that you put out there, there's gonna be a failure somewhere. No deaths in the United States that I'm aware of for any of that stuff. No real adverse effects for the community when they...
When they spills, fires, I don't understand.
Yeah, so in one case, there was a fire. Another case, there was an explosion that took place. Another one was no fire, no explosion, just a loss of the system as a result of a defective sprinkler system, believe it or not.
Is there any kind of rays that are emitted from these batteries?
Any type of EMF?
Any kind of, rays?
Electromagnetic would be what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, EMF. Yeah, I wouldn't be an expert on that, but I was at some meetings where an expert did testify that there would be no problem, but I don't want to go on record to say that I'm saying that.
Somebody's gonna have to.
I can address that briefly. I also am not an electrical engineer, and I can potentially have Ivan speak to that at Powen, but I would say a couple things about that. My understanding is that basically all electrical equipment, our microwaves, our dishwashers, our washer, dryer, our cell phones, the power lines running by our house emit EMS of some degree. And so that's a reality for our lives powered by electricity. My understanding from hearing, as ESRG was saying, there's an electrical expert by the name of Gavin D. Scott, a PhD, who's an electric EMP expert. And my understanding is there's no more risk to someone's health from the battery energy storage system than the existing electrical components in your own home, your refrigerator, your washer, your dryer. I also would say, I'm not a technical expert on EMFs. I would just say that is what I've heard about these systems, is that they are very safe being next to residents, and that's not a concern.
And I think it's a valid question. If we do go further with this application into the review, that's something we could definitely ask through secret to get some
Noise,
data.
how much noise do they emit?
I'm glad you asked that question. We've actually done a preliminary sound study for the noise. And, I've spoke with Brian Stark, the owner of the Glenwood community, and he's told me he is supportive of the project, but his biggest concern is ensuring noise doesn't impact his residents. And so it's very relevant. We're working very hard to make sure we're within the town code, the municipal code for the noise. Now, we submitted our preliminary sound study to the planning staff, which does show in that preliminary study that there's a potential for the battery system to be above the local ordinance, and so we're addressing that. This is what we know so far, that there's a potential for, on the northwest corner, the corner that is adjacent to the Glenwood residence, that the sound at the property line could be in the range of 58 to 65 decibels.
And when
Now,
does that occur? Constantly?
it does not occur constantly. The biggest sound that comes from these is the HVAC units and the inverters. The HVAC, each unit has an air conditioning unit on top, a small air conditioning unit for every battery unit. Now, when those air conditioning units turn on to cool the batteries when they're charging and when they're discharging. And so you could imagine when the batteries discharge, when people come home from work and call upon that energy between 5 to 7 p.m., there's a higher likelihood of those air conditioning units running and there being more sound. At that point, it would sound like a large air conditioning unit running that at the property line could range from 55 to 65 decibels. Now, you probably are aware right now, I'm speaking at probably 65 decibels right now. I actually have I could show you on my phone. I've got a NIOSH sound meter that tells me how loud I'm talking. And as I'm talking right now next to me, this is showing 71 decibels, 69 decibels. So you can see 65 decibels is not that loud of a sound. And I know that from the distance between the closest HVAC unit to the property line on the northwest corner is 40 feet. Every time that distance doubles, the sound reduces by 6 decibels. So from the property line to the nearest home in Glenwood is over 100 feet. So what that means is, if at the property line, worst case, the sound is 65 decibels, in the course of 100 feet, it's going to drop at least 12 decibels. So it's going to go from 65 to 53 decibels. Now, 50 to 55 decibels is normal quiet conversation in your house. And so, all that to say, the 55 decibel range is like an electric toothbrush. And so that this is not going to be a loud, impactful sound on the Glenwood residents. I will say, all that said, that was done without taking into account the tree barrier and any sound mitigation we put in place. We have VHB now doing a deeper dive sound study into this at this moment, and whatever results they come up with for a firmer answer on exactly what the sound will be at each point on each point of the property line, we fully intend to finance whatever is required for sound mitigation to keep all sound at every point of this property line under the municipal code. And so that may look like a sound barrier, that may look like a sound wall, but we're committed to the sound not being impactful to the Glenwood residents and for that to be beneath what is required by the municipal code.
What's the life expectancy of these units?
20 years.
Then what happens to them?
They get recycled.
In this country, or?
Yes. There's a battery recycling industry that is growing now. Obviously, battery energy storage in the state of New York as well as across the United States is still a very new industry for the current use case for 2 to 4 hour lithium-ion batteries. And so that battery recycling industry is growing and will look very different 20 years from now when we recycle these. But that is the plan in place upon decommissioning, is that so these batteries come in with a crane truck that will put the batteries on a cement pad. 20 years later, crane truck comes in, takes the metal cabinets off, and then to a recycling facility.
Thank you.
I'm curious about something you mentioned, Paul, about one of the accidents was caused by irrigation.
Yeah, it was a defective, well, it's preliminary,
Well,
right?
the site had
Preliminary, so
irrigation.
I should be careful that, it's preliminary, but there was a lot of water that was actually, came out of the sprinkler system, and, they're not exactly sure how that happened.
Oh, is this an indoor facility?
It was partially indoor-outdoor, so it did have an indoor, sprinkler
There'll
system.
be no irrigation on this site
No.
at all, right?
Correct, sir. There would not be, currently we do not have this engineered with irrigation on site, piped to water, no piping to water the plants. We'd have a private landscaping contractor water the trees, and also is water not piped directly to the battery units themselves. We have chemical suppressant is automatic sprinklers inside of each container that is not water, it's a chemical suppressant. And then we have, so to answer your question, no. Water not directly piped to the site, not planning on using water.
How about
for it.
fencing? Is the site going to be fenced?
Yes, sir.
Correct. Currently, we have 8-foot fence on the site plan, but per
What
the
kind of
planning,
fence?
we're looking to
Chain link
reduce.
or?
A chain link, correct. We're looking to reduce it to 6 based on the planning staff's recommendations. And that will also include obviously double gated access on Mill Road at the side entry, and then also the substation itself, or the switchyard, is also fenced in separately on the site.
Adam, you had talked about the noise mostly being during charging and discharging. What hours in the day does that usually occur?
So that does depend, Chris. So discharging most commonly would be in peak use. So peak use usually when people come home from work, call it 5 to 7 p.m. Charging could depend on when demand is lowest or when there's excess energy that people aren't using that's the greatest. So for example, that could be 10 to 2 p.m. when the solar farms in Riverhead are generating power. That could be when they charge. It could also be in the middle of the night.
Okay, so that's important too.
Yeah, I would think after midnight would be a certain low usage.
Absolutely.
Well, that's when they'd be charging, but.
I thought you were gonna start singing there for a minute after midnight.
That's
what
I
was
think
thinking.
that's a pretty good overview for, I don't know if the board has additional questions. The report does speak to my report does speak to a lot of things. We'll still need to do a thorough review of this
A lot to
application.
do.
Yes, should we get to that point?
I have one question, I think, I should ask you this question. There's a lot of heat generated in the charging and the use when they're in use. These air conditioning units obviously can control, what's the highest temperature they get internally? And what do you have in place to, I know they can, there is a situation where you can withdraw too much, which is a dangerous situation.
I can
How do you-
speak to that, and also if Ivan is still on the phone, he could speak to that from Ivan, as he's very intimately familiar with this technology and these HVAC units. I will say that the air conditioning units, I know in normal conditions, exchange air within each unit 6 to 8 times a minute. And so that rapidly reduces heat and allows them to be kept at normal temperature. Ivan, would you like to say anything else about, how these air conditioning units keep the units at normal temperature, and how, any risks there?
Unless, George, if you want to get very in-depth on the specifics of this application now, I just wanted to keep it
Okay.
as much
all
of an
right, okay.
overview as we can,
We can ask them.
rather than getting, there will be a time and a place for all of
Okay,
this.
okay.
I just want to keep us,
Okay, so you don't want Ivan to respond?
no, I don't think, unless you're
Okay.
inclined.
No, I agree with Matt. I really just wanted
So
to
I'm
learn
just-
information about battery
thanks, Ivan. I
energy
guess
storage,
I'm not gonna
not
respond to
actually
that.
discuss any site plans. So,
Yeah, we have additional more things to submit to the planning department to complete the application, and then I'm sure we'll be back before you guys again.
Have you scheduled to be in front of the zoning board yet, or not yet?
No, not yet. We're working on it, though.
I know that the town board is considering extending the solar moratorium until the updated comprehensive plan is intact. And being that solar and energy kind of work together, I'm wondering if maybe the new zoning for any projects moving forward should be in tandem with the comprehensive plan. So,
I actually have an answer I could apply to that, ma'am, about that comprehensive plan. Just to consider, for the board to consider, I was here on Tuesday and definitely heard the concerns about waiting until the new comprehensive plan is finished before we would approve the battery code or a battery project, and I understand that makes sense to plan all of that from a holistic perspective. Just for the board's consideration, given battery energy storage has a potential to benefit residents here, both in their physical health and in their pocketbook, I think that's the tension that the board holds in their hands to consider. Should we wait till the comprehensive plan comes? If that means residents are paying more for energy and suffering from pollution more for their health than is required, if we thoughtfully, safely, and carefully put a battery in a location that makes sense.
One last
I
time.
understand, I just want everybody to know that we
One
are
last thing
being
on that?
considerate of the town board.
This is a very small user of land as compared to solar, when we're talking hundreds of acres. This is a 3.5-acre site that could store 100 megawatts of power for all, when
Okay,
demand is
again, I don't want to
there.
talk about the site right now, I wanted to
Yeah.
learn about the,
So I think we have the applicant's perspective, what they're looking for, how they want to, approach this application. I think the board probably has a better understanding how these work. If the time comes when this moves forward, we will be taking a much deeper look at this through the secret process, through the site plan. Fire code, it's been referred out to the fire marshal. They're looking at all their plans now. I'm awaiting comments on a lot of things. It's to the local fire district, it's been to engineering. So we're waiting to get information back, and obviously it's only going to get more in-depth from here.
perfect, perfect.
Yeah, Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
guys.
thank you.
If you have any follow-up questions, please reach out.
Thank you, appreciate your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Did everyone get a copy of the maps?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, I have to bring out my glasses on this one. I never let anybody see my glasses.
I think I prefer to leave this with the board.
Okay, let's move on to our public comments on the resolutions. If you have any comments on the resolutions that are on today's agenda, please come up. No one?
No.
Up?
Good afternoon. Barbara Blass. I live in Jamesport. I don't know if you are planning to take resolution on HK Ventures off the table today, but I was just going to ask you that in the event you are, do you have any answers to any of the questions or the responses to any of the concerns I raised during the meeting on the 4th or my follow-up letter on August 8th?
No, I do not.
Do you have any written justification for any of the independent review of HK Ventures, OSTAD, or North Point? Did you receive any or provide any information as to why and how you're handling these independently?
No.
Nothing from council? So I'm just going to say, in the event you take that action, I would like to remind you that as the lead agency, your review of HK Ventures, OSTAD, and North Point have met the threshold for segmentation, which is a single affirmative response to any of the following questions. Is there a common purpose or goal? May these actions occur on or about the same time? Are the projects in a common geographic region? Are there common impacts expected? You would score 100%, which in this case is not a good thing. Independent review of these projects or segmentation is contrary to proper seeker review, is inconsistent with procedures outlined in Part 617, and is in violation of the Environmental Conservation Law. These projects have to be evaluated together and their impacts assessed cumulatively. And I just ask you to keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John McAuliffe from Roanoke Landing in Riverhead, and I want to speak to the same resolution. And I'd want to start out by asking you to look at what is in front of you on the podium, which is the Ukrainian flag. It is, I don't know when it was placed there by the board, but it is there for all official meetings, as it should be, as a statement, a symbolic statement against Russian hegemonism and aggression, armed aggression, violent aggression against the people of Ukraine. There was an article that I cited in your last meeting, and I sent again the link to you. And if you've not read it, I want to read one sentence from it. EOC in this sentence refers to Eurasian organized crime, which is the FBI term for Russian and Eastern European organized crime.
Okay, I think that we already went through this.
No,
at the
but
last
let
meeting.
me, I understand, but give me a couple of minutes and I will be done, and you can rest with this in your larger responsibility to the town. The FBI indicated that historical law enforcement information indicates that Kislin, that is Eric Kislin, the principal for this project, Kislin handles large-scale investments within the United States for wealthy members of EOC, and that Kislin's activities focus on laundering EOC profits from overseas. I mean, that's about as direct as you can get about the responsibility for looking at where the investment is coming from that is going into this project. And whether that's your responsibility or the town board's responsibility, somebody in the town needs to recognize, especially with that symbol in front of you, that we're in a different historical moment that makes this a particular concern. The last thing I want to cite from that article, I mean, it's been very odd to know why such a gargantuan and inappropriate project has moved. I know it hasn't moved fast, but it's moved through the process. The article also noted, while the New York businessman's involvement in the project had not previously been disclosed publicly, his name does appear in a financial disclosure report filed last month by the Riverhead Town Republican Committee. The report shows Mr. Kislin, on behalf of HK Ventures, made a maximum allowable $5,000 contribution to the committee on July 1st. Now, that was the previous election cycle. I've not gone into the records to know whether he made a similar contribution in this cycle. But I know this is the norm in local politics, that people make donations in order to get attention from local commissions that govern their businesses. that's part of the way our system works. But I think, again, there's a particular issue about having this person who is credibly connected or accused of being connected to the Russian mafia coming into Riverhead in a major project, and the project itself is a different issue, which I have doubts about, but those are just a single person's.
John, do you know the duties of the planning board? Site plan and subdivision.
I understand
You don't have
that.
anything to do with the Russian mob or any of that.
That
You know
where,
about political donations,
Where-
subdivisions and site plans.
well, you are named, obviously, we know the way people are named to this board, and the Republican committee plays a role
All
in
right,
that.
that's enough. Thank you very much.
All right, with that said, somebody else want to speak? I'm going to ask planning to say legal reason we shouldn't, yes or no.
Good afternoon. Little COVID protection. My name is Mike Foley, and I live in Reeve Park, and I'm here to speak about Resolution 80, the HK Venture Project. I listened to the last planning board meeting and listened and then pulled information that Barbara had mentioned from this podium. And there were issues that didn't just involve what Barbara described as a segmentation issue, that the board should strongly consider the fact that there are 3 similar projects in the hamlet of Calverton that comprise about 2 million square feet of development, and that rather than looking at these things individually, it is of critical importance, especially now that we're still waiting for a comprehensive plan to come together that will probably, hopefully, address these things. And Joanne, I thought it was a good comment on your part that you had mentioned to the battery storage people, that the solar moratorium was put on because they were contemplating through the comprehensive plan, a more comprehensive understanding on where things belong in this town. And it's not just for solar farms. The gentleman here was correct. This battery-powered issue that they're talking about is only 3 acres. But this is new technology. And as you had mentioned, George, the amount of homes that this would power is kind of small compared to the size of the problem, and you're right. And that's why we should contemplate as a town that there are going to be a lot of projects like this. So
This has nothing to do with the resolutions.
I'm sorry?
What you're speaking about right now has nothing to do with the resolutions. That's what we're
As
discussing
far
right
as the resolution on allowing HK Ventures?
now. Well, when you were just speaking of,
Just speaking about the
Well, I was drawing I'm sorry, Joanne, I was drawing the analogy that you considered the battery issue to be something that should be considered in the comprehensive plan. I'm drawing the analogy that 2 million feet of industrial space should be considered in a comprehensive way as well. And HK Ventures is one of 3 projects that are in the works right now, all in Calverton, comprising 2 million square feet of industrial space. So the fact that that should make you pause or consider or investigate looking at this in a comprehensive way rather than in an individual way, I thought was the reason that the planning board decided to table the resolution 3 weeks ago. There was another reason why it could have been, and that was because all of this voluminous application was made available to be posted and considered in May, and it was not put online until the day before. Well, certainly that could have been a very reasonable explanation on why the planning board decided to give the town people that were interested in looking at this 2 weeks to take a look at all that information. So there were reasons that I was thinking why you tabled it 2 weeks ago. And both of those reasons in my mind were proper. But now, I just heard Barbara ask if the points that she made about tabling this individual venture or putting it into a larger scope environmental impact study, which is called for by state codes, that when you have similar projects like this, that you can't just look at one without looking at the other two to look at the cumulative impact of the town. And I think when you look at that as a template for consideration, that I think the planning board is compelled to look at this in the manner that Barbara requested of you from her research. To look at all three of these at the same time. To say this is 2 million square feet that's going up in a hamlet, in an area that's a potential environmental justice area. And to look at just how much that could impact everything that we have in this town. The air quality, the water quality, the traffic studies, and all of the things that that encompasses. Right now, we are dealing with a water crisis. As a country, as a planet, and as a town. I know that has nothing to do right now with HK, with the exception of, we don't know where their water's coming from. We don't know if they are planning on getting hooked up to the Riverhead Water Company, or if that's even contemplated. We don't know if they're looking to drill a well. And I think if they're looking to drill a well, they need DEC approval. So all of these things that we can set in motion by tabling or approving this application is critical for the short-term future of the town. And hoping if we can look at this in a comprehensive way, that as the comprehensive plan is being developed for this town, the industrial space will be contemplated, the same as you alluded to, Joanne, in battery space. It is absolutely on point. The same way the town board said, hey, we're getting away from ourselves here with individual applications for solar. The same can be said about individual applications for industrial square footage. So I'm asking you to take a hard look at this, and I'm disappointed that it almost sounded like you didn't read or consider what Barbara put in front of you. Now, I don't believe that. I think maybe the response early in Barbara's presentation might not have been accurate. I hope it wasn't accurate. Barbara's one of the best thought-out people in this town, with a tremendous history on the planning board, on the town board, and as an environmental advocate. And I think we have to listen to people of Barbara's stature, somebody that is researched as well as Barbara is. And this planning board has listened to Barbara in the past. They've, for whatever reason, listened to me in the past about the Baiting Hollow Farm Vineyard, where this was just going to go through, and you guys considered it, heard the town, looked at the petitions, and decided to shut that catering hall down. We're thankful for that. We are asking you now to take a look at what's in front of you and look at the larger picture. Look at the long-term ramifications of this town. Understand that the comprehensive plan stalled now. I understand that the town board had a work session that was looking at 3 consultants to replace AKRF. That's great. And hopefully they'll do a more competent job than AKRF did. But as a planning board, you are now posed with an individual project that you know, by the geographic nature of it, is one of 3 projects. This one talks about 400,000 square feet. Those 3 projects deal with 2 million square feet. So I'll ask you to strongly consider either voting this out, however you would vote this, out of an individual consideration into a more comprehensive, all-inclusive look at the industrial space development in Calverton, or table it to look at it some more. And I do believe that if you look at this hard, with all of the reasons why this needs to be looked at in a comprehensive way and not taken on an individual basis, that you'll consider legal opinions that are at your disposal as a planning board, or discuss amongst yourself the reasons why this really needs to be considered in a comprehensive way, and either dealt with, put back into the pool, where you can look at all 3, or table it until a comprehensive plan can deal with it to give you better direction on where this town needs to go for the next 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne, I'd like to ask planning staff a couple questions, if I might.
Please.
Planning staff, in your opinion, has everything been done properly on this application? I'm sorry?
Gotta wait for Greg.
question was, has this undergone a thorough comprehensive review?
I have several questions. Is the application complete?
Yes,
Has everything been done properly?
yes.
Were any laws broken?
No, we followed the secret statute in terms of
Any
process.
special treatment to this applicant?
Absolutely not.
Has the Department of Law reviewed this application?
We spoke, we had a meeting with the planning board attorney last Friday.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to say that I spent time with you, Greg, on the phone, talking about the comments that Barbara had sent in and worrying about how we were going to, whether we were going to follow this, and everything was good, and I'm satisfied.
I appreciate it. I mean, again, this application has been submitted, the property is zoned industrial C. When the town's, Ed, you were on the board, when the comprehensive plan was adopted in 2003, the comprehensive plan had a draft generic environmental impact statement, a final generic environmental impact statement, and the town board at the time made a finding statement. All of that zoning, industrial C, we hear it consistently, you know, the industrial zone is in Calverton, the industrial zone is in Calverton. When the town board zoned the town and established the zoning, industrial A and industrial C was centered in Calverton. The vision for the comprehensive plan in 2003 had envisioned Calverton to be a thriving business district, various industrial warehousing uses. So I mean, to say that we now need to, we're getting applications that are consistent with the established zoning, that has been well thought out by the town board. I mean, to go back and read through the 2003 comp plan, it's an incredible document. It was well, you know, there was a lot of input put from public agencies, many different individuals, interested parties throughout town. So I mean, to say now that we're starting to see the development come through 20 some odd years later, so now we need to restudy it, I don't think it's fair to the 2003 comprehensive plan, because this was thorough, was well thought out, was well established. This is not like, oh, well, it's industrial C, we're proposing a nuclear power plant. They're proposing applications and projects that are consistent with the established zoning, which underwent a thorough, qualified environmental review process. That's it.
Quick question, has Stephen Schwartz been hired yet?
They were retained, we are getting comments from them, so we will have comments on the,
Thank you.
they are retained for North Point and Ostad.
Thank you, Greg.
Make a motion that we take resolution number 80 for HK Ventures off the table, so moved.
I'll second it.
Vote please, Bear.
No.
Nenaro.
Yes.
Nacesky.
Aye.
Woski, yes.
Make a motion that we,
I thought he was going to kill it. I thought you were killing it.
no, it's taken off the table.
Because it was off the table, isn't it, the last meeting?
Yeah, we did. I'm going to move resolution number 80 for HK Ventures, so moved.
Second,
Vote please, Bear.
yes?
Nenaro.
Yes.
Nacesky.
Yes.
Woski, yes.
I'll move resolution 82 for Fadoon Warehouse number 4, to schedule a public hearing for preliminary site plan. So moved.
Second the motion?
Vote please, Bear.
Yes.
Nenaro.
Yep.
Nacesky.
Aye.
Woski, yes.
I'll move resolution number 84. We schedule a public hearing for 680 Elton Street in Riverhead.
Second it.
Vote please, Bear.
Yes?
Nenaro.
Aye.
Nacesky.
Aye.
Woski, yes.
Sorry, we did Norfolk. We skipped
Yeah,
Norfolk.
we need 83.
I skipped
Okay.
Norfolk.
I was wondering if... Move resolution number 83 for Norfolk Developers LLC, so moved.
Second.
Vote please, Bear.
Yes?
Nenaro.
Aye.
Nacesky.
Aye.
Woski, yes. Do we have any public comments on all matters?
We got another one.
Oh,
We got
we're
another
going
one.
off the wrong agenda.
Yeah, I'll move.
Resolution 22-85 approves the amended 25-lot Long Island Workforce Housing Act compliant sketch plan for printed places.
I'll move the resolution.
I'll second it.
All right, vote please. Bear.
Yes.
Nenaro.
Aye.
Nacesky.
Aye.
Woski, yes. Okay, public comments on all matters?
Good afternoon again, Madam Chairman, members of the board. My name is Barbara Blass, and I live in Jamesport. I was very excited to hear about what was a bona fide preliminary site plan presentation on the battery storage, and I'm really looking forward to a cohesive approach to citing all types of renewable energy and their related technologies in the town as a result of the comprehensive plan. But I'm going to speak about process because you know that's where I always land on process. And I know you're not a policy-making board, but I think it's important that you hear these comments. The town board held a public hearing on the battery storage code on Tuesday. Sid Bale, a member of the Comprehensive Plan Citizens Advisory Committee, wisely suggested to the town board that battery storage systems should be more fully analyzed in the context of the comprehensive plan update. And it makes sense because it's part of the clean energy strategy that we asked to be developed in the plan. Mr. Bale then questioned why a battery storage application was on your agenda when zoning and rules guiding this kind of development were not yet in place. Mr. Murphy responded that today's discussion, which we heard, was scheduled in the interest of transparency and for education. He called it a, quote, public education forum, whose purpose was to get the planning board and the public familiar with this new technology as early in the process as possible, to give them a heads up about what to expect with these applications. Those comments are part of the official public record. So let's look at those comments and compare them to the facts. The staff had a pre-submission conference with this applicant back in October, 10 months ago. That would have been a good time for a heads up. We saw a draft proposed code from staff in April. Why not enlighten the board then? Why wait for this applicant to go through the application process, it's still underway, but nonetheless provide a fully engineered site plan drawings by engineering company VHB, pay the application fee, fill out the long environmental assessment form, and everything else that goes along with a site plan application, including notarized signatures, and suggest that this was on your agenda to educate the board and the public on the technology. And who would consider a public information forum at 3 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon when the public can't even participate in the discussion? I'm sorry, but the word disingenuous comes to mind. There are some other notable facts about the proposed code and the application before you. The code would not permit the facility in the RB40 zoning use district. You heard that earlier. In the denial letter, Mr. Murphy directed the applicant to apply to the zoning board for a special exception to substitute one non-conforming use for another. And of course, the ZBA has the authority to do that, but the use has to be lawfully permitted somewhere in the town. Otherwise, it's not a non-conforming use, it's a non-existent use. Was the scheduling of the hearing by the town board prior to the public discussion of this application timed such that a legal argument could be made that the town board clearly intends to make it a permitted use in the town, rendering it theoretically a non-conforming use? And as if it couldn't get any more bizarre, staff presented particulars of the proposed code, which included a requirement that a Tier 2 battery storage system would require a special permit from the town board. Not so for this one that you heard today, which, by the way, according to Powen's website, is the largest one built by them worldwide in terms of megawatts. They haven't built one yet of 100 megawatts. But it just so happens that this particular application, if it should get a special exception from the zoning board, they don't go back to the town board at all. No special permit, nothing. It says it right in the EAF. For all intents and purposes, this application is almost in complete contravention of key provisions of the proposed code, which planning staff has been working on for months with the Code Revision Committee. How and why would an applicant continue to invest in developing a non-compliant application unless he was aware that at some point there was some light at the end of the tunnel for him? Instead of sound planning principles in play here, we seem to have a well-orchestrated strategy which flies in the face of responsible, trustworthy, and professional behavior. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Would anyone else like to come up and comment?
Mike Foley, Reeves Park. What Barbara just spoke about is really disturbing to me. I know Jeff for 4 or 5 years. I've considered him a competent, well-intentioned head of planning board. I actually had a couple of emails with Jeff over the last couple of days. What is being presented right now almost seems like Jeff is looking to give a developer or an applicant an inside edge on the application process. I have not ever looked at Jeff like that. I don't want to look at Jeff like that. I'm a retired elected union representative with 27 years, 5 months, and 16 days taking care of my members of the CWA. The last thing I want to do is to get anybody jammed up over the job that they're doing. But I'm saying here, and I'm saying to Jeff, that as people look at this, I'm going to listen very carefully, and I see you back there, Jeff, now. I'd love to hear you come up at the end of this and comment on what Barbara just said. There were a couple of things that were told to me over the last month or so that I just dismissed out of hand, not by Barbara, but by other people whose opinions I value and whose facts I trust. And in the world of the draft-dodging, pathological, lying ex-president of the United States that has made lying a normal part of the process, truth means something, and facts mean something. And I hope, Jeff, if you're here, that the allegations specific to this one issue can be answered by you, because I really want to believe that you are working in the best interest of this town.
Can you please address the board?
Yeah, you're right, Joanne. You're right, and I apologize to that.
Thank you.
I hope Jeff will, because he is here, take a few minutes at the microphone to address the, for want of a better term, allegations that were just thrown at him. It's not the first I've heard, but it is serious enough for me to come here today and to make this statement. So on that note, I hope you can certainly, if you want to comment on it, like any time, you're certainly welcome to. But you're not the accused here in this instant case. Jeff is. And it hurts me, it pains me to talk about that, because I've had Jeff, and I believe until very recently, that Jeff has had the best interests at heart of this town. And I hope, after further explanation or fact-finding, that I'll verify that to be true.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anyone else like to come up? Seeing that there's no one, we do not have minutes from the last
I'll
meeting.
move the minutes.
We don't have
No,
any
we don't have
minutes. No other business, correspondence. Our next meeting date is Thursday, September 1st, 2022, excuse me, at 6 p.m.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.